is AI going to take my job, right? And I'm like, no, it's not going to take your job. It's meant to level you up.
But agility is the ability to move quickly together, not to move quickly in one organization. Business agility has to be across business stakeholders and IT stakeholders.
What's up, everybody? Super excited today. Hi, I'm Chris Ortega, the CEO of Fresh FP&A, and I'm super pumped for this conversation today. Today, I'm going to be talking with Kaiser Larson, the VP of Product Marketing and Data and Analytics at SAP. Welcome, Kaiser.
Thank you, Chris. Excited to chat with you, man.
Hey, man, so when we look at data right now, data is like one of the hottest topics inside of the finance organization, even inside of the business. But it's getting away from insights and turning it into action. So one of my first lead-off questions for you, Kaiser, is how can organizations get away from just having data to present and turn that into action?
I love that question because I was actually just reading the other day, I found this stat that said only 31% of executives believe that their organizations are data-driven. 31%. It's 2023. We've got tons of data. We have amazing tools, amazing processes, but people are still, we're not data-driven. Why? Because data-driven is meaning we take action on our data rather than, hey, I had another insight, or hey, here's another dashboard. Like, hey, maybe you could use this, right? And really, it just falls by the wayside. So I think one big thing is context. Context. When you are just sharing data, a dashboard, or just sharing a quick report or whatever it may be, here's an insight maybe you can find. What's the context for this thing that I'm sharing with you? Are we looking at supply chain? Are we trying to do prediction disruptions? Are we trying to understand our sales better? What's the context I'm looking for from a business standpoint? That's number one. But also, what about from a data standpoint? Where did this data come from? What currency rates are we using? And a lot of that context are within our systems, right? So making sure, one, I use a tool that lets me permeate the context throughout all of my use cases, because that delivers clarity. And number two, what's the business context here? What are we doing? What are we doing with this? What's the point, right? And making that clear from the get-go, rather than just, hey, let's do another exercise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I love your point on the context of it, because so many times in the office of the CFO in business, right, you get this fancy dashboard and people look at it, right, Kaiser, and they're like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? And I think as we get to the point where you're having that insight moving into action, where I always look at it from a point where when I want to give insight, when I want to give data, it's going to drive some emotion, right? I want somebody to feel a certain way when they look at revenue growth year over year compared to where it was last year, right? So I love that like context element. But like when you transition that from like context, a lot of it is speaking the business's language, right? When you look at the office of the CFO, that's a big gap that finance people have, is like speaking that business language. So taking it a step further on the context side, how can business partners work together to meet that common ground from that communication aspect?
And I think that's the next step you have to take to build a data culture. Right? There's another C for us. Context, culture. We're just going to keep going with the C's, right? So the next step I have to take, number one, is I really want to communicate with my data side of the house of, hey, love the data you're delivering, but business data has to be delivered in business terms. So how can I work with you to make sure when you're delivering a dashboard, a report, an intelligent data app, whatever it may be, that it's delivered in business terms? Because me seeing a bunch of field IDs that I have no idea what it means and a bunch of null values, thanks, right? Like, wow, looks complex. Thank you. See you later. So I think first it's collaboration between your business stakeholders and your IT stakeholders of, hey, I know you guys want to have incredible technology, but what we really care about is when you deliver business data, that it's in business terms. So how can we do that? And there's tons of technologies out there, right? That we can deliver that in, but it's making it clear between the CFO and the CIO, maybe having that conversation, and even down and cascading it, hey, it needs to be in business-friendly terms, or it's just noise. It's just zeros and ones. Rows and columns rather than intelligence, right?
Exactly. And I think that talks about like the connection aspect of it, right? And like when you think about data silos, right? A lot of organizations are suffering where marketing is keeping their data, finance is keeping their data, operations is keeping their data. So this idea of bringing connection to data, right? That's a big problem for small, medium-sized, enterprise-level companies, right? And I think when organizations can break down that silo and bring that connection, right? You bring that conversation to the audience, right? Now you got people in the room, you got finance in the room, you got operations in the room having these great conversations, and it's not this anecdotal, right? Like I remember sitting in conversations and you put a number up on the board and like you look at it and sales is like, I thought that number was different, right?
Yes.
You bring that centralization to where now everybody's coming with that seat at the table to have that connection and have that conversation, right? So I guess what would be some pieces of advice that you would give people to break down those data silos and bring that more connection inside the business?
I think one advice I would do is look across your data portfolio and your data tools and ask yourself, the tools and the technology that I'm choosing, am I serving the technology or is the technology serving me?
Ooh.
Right? Because so many times we get in, I'm guilty of this, right? Like back in the day when I was just a data analyst, I loved, Tableau or I loved Power BI, right? And this is the tool we're using, period, right? And we're not using anything else because I love this tool and this is what I'm doing. This is all I want to do. And I was constantly, putting all my efforts into this tool that we had rather than figuring out, am I actually delivering the insights to my sales organization that they needed?
Yeah.
Am I just serving my technology, or is the technology actually serving me? So I need to look for technology that has collaboration inherently in there, right? Does this allow me to collaborate? Does this allow me to connect? Is this more just a technology that's going to build another silo, or is part of the value proposition really bring together your entire organization? And there, not just, hey, bring together data engineers and data science. No. Bring together business and bring together IT, right? Or it's just more noise and you don't get to that connection and collaboration.
Most definitely. And I love, when I look back over my finance career and leading high growth SaaS businesses, right? That's always been one where it's like, and I love your analogy, is the technology serving you or are you serving the technology? And too many times in the finance organization, finance is serving the business. We're commanding the business. Go use our tool. Go put all your information in there, right? And that's been kind of the mindset that we brought to the business. When we change that and say, hey, business, let's come to the table and let me see how I can help understand the pains, the frustrations, the opportunities and challenges that you see in your business, and how can I help you collaborate that?
Right.
Bring in the technology to be able to do that. Now you're serving the business. And when I think about the office of the CFO, that's how we scale, right? I don't know about you, Kaiser, but when sales are growing 50% year over year, triple digits, I never got from the CEO to say, Chris, go hire more financial analysts or accounting people, right? You had to do more with less. And this is where technology becomes, I think, that superpower for business partners, right? Like now you have a lot more capability. And not only that, but you have a lot more capacity, right? Like you're not in this data aggregation, this churning and burning through these files and data mining and data manipulation. You're actually in the high value activity, right? So how can teams shift to that more higher focus, right? How can they shift to be the collaborative partner, the strategic partner, and thinking about the future?
I love what you said, right? Because often technology becomes a stumbling block rather than a force multiplier. With your example, right, of you're scaling up and you're expected to do more. Well, your technology should enable you to do more.
Facts.
Right? It shouldn't be hindering. So to your question, I would say first I want to build a foundation. Because if I don't have the right foundation of a data portfolio or a data landscape, I could have all the great intentions of connecting my CIO and my CFO organizations better or delivering business data in business terms, but I don't have the technology to serve me to do it, then we're gonna struggle again in another year, right? We're gonna have the same conversation. So what I am really excited about is what we call the business data fabric at SAP. And that's not a new term. Data fabric's been around for a long time, but why it's so interesting to me and why I think it's really a big future for data landscapes is because it thinks about your world. It thinks about FP&A. It thinks about how to build intelligent data applications. It thinks about extended planning and analysis. It thinks about workforce planning rather than, hey, let's build a database or hey, let's build a data warehouse or a data lake. It's more, let's build an intelligent foundation that allows me to deliver meaningful data to every data consumer, business or IT, with business context intact.
Nice.
Right? You have to have that foundation. So what I would look for if I'm a buyer and I'm looking for something to serve me, a technology to serve me that connects my FP&A, my data management portfolios, my whatever it may be, I want to make sure that the tools that I'm going to be using in my FP&A practices have deep inherent connection with my data portfolio, my other data tools. And that's one reason I'm super excited about SAP DataSphere and its connection to SAP Analytics Cloud.
Yeah.
It's inherent, it's native, and it's only going to get better, better, and better. And what SAP DataSphere does is it serves multiple different audiences, but for ours, for FP&A, it makes their life easier.
Thanks.
Right? So you have to make sure to answer your question in summary, build the right foundation.
Yes.
And ask yourself right now, do we have the right foundation?
Yeah, and I love that question, right? Because you got to be honest in that question, right? I think a lot of organizations.
It can be tough.
It
can be tough.
It's coming to that moment where you got to look yourself and say, hey, we're not as data driven as we thought we were, right? But I think that's the baseline. You talked about the foundation, right? Like you got to know where you're at to know where you want to get to, right? And when I always look at foundations for the office of the CFO and finance teams that I've transformed and scaled, it's always been 3 key pillars of that foundation, right? People, process, and partnership.
Amen.
Right? You got that solid foundation. Now you bring in DataSphere. Now you bring in BTP. Right? You bring in these platforms to now scale. Right? And those scaling pillars are platform, performance, and profit, right?
Yes.
Like that is the framework of financial transformation, and that is where technology is meant to scale you, right? And when you can do that, not only in the finance organization, but in the sales organization, in the operational, in the people side, and you can be that one spoke in that center wheel to bring that connection, bring that clarity, right? Because right now, Kaiser, there's a lot of chaos going on, right? There's a lot of things going on. Macro, you got, global economic crisis that we're in. You got a lot of these macro factors that are affecting. And when finance and the business can bring that clarity, right? We can bring that clarity across the organization and say, hey, here's where we're going, here's where we're at, and here's what we need to do to get there, right? I think that's the power.
Amen. And I think, and off that point of what you're just saying, a lot of times right now we talk about business agility. Right, and like with FP&A transformation, but agility is the ability to move quickly together, not to move quickly in one organization. Business agility has to be across business stakeholders and IT stakeholders, right? So you have to have that sitting down and building the right foundation between both of these, honestly, at times different worlds and opposing worlds, and think, okay, if we really want to drive business agility, increase our resilience, IT can't just do it. They can't. Business can't just do it. You've got to sit down together and really have a few goals that you want to implement. A few goals, and ask yourself, do I have the right foundation? Is my technology serving me? And those will start to get you to go, not really, right? Every time we deliver this dashboard, it's not in business terms. And so it becomes a meeting about what does this row mean? And what does that column mean?
Where'd that data come from?
And can I trust this? And rather than here are self-service data products delivered in your language. That's where we want to get to, right? And that's what a data fabric does. At the pinnacle of the data fabric is here are self-service data products for you ready to go. So you can say, hey, I'm looking for customer churn data that's up to date, compliant. I want to merge it with some weather data or some supply chain data or some sales or some finance or historical transaction data.
Boom.
There you go.
Boom.
Right? And it's possible. It's possible, but you have to ask yourself those questions as you've said.
Yeah, and I love that analogy, right? When data starts to become on demand for the business, I always look at this thing like, right, I go to the hotel, right, and if I want to watch the newest movie, right, it's at the click of a button. I can have that movie. You look at like how just consumer behavior is, right? Like we get data on demand, right? We can go into Twitter, we can go into all these different things and get that data, right? The best way that we can communicate that over to the business and they get that right there, that self-service model that you talked about, it's like, you don't have to wait for finance. You don't have to wait for IT. Like these insights, these actionable insights that you need to make better business decisions lives. It's native, right?
Exactly.
It's not this algorithm you have to build. That is really the gold standard.
I agree.
One last question I want to talk about. I think one of the hottest topics we talk about data right now, generative AI.
Yeah.
That is hot right now. What's your hot take on it, Kaiser?
I think you've got to step back and think, let me think of 3 use cases where this simplifies the work for my business and accelerates what we do. Like, don't, like, the hype is awesome. I love it.
The hype is real. The hype is real.
The hype is real because the
real.
value can be real if you actually carve it out.
Yeah.
But sit down and carve it out. How are we going to use generative AI? Well, you know, we have a use case where a lot of our business folks right now keep asking for data on our customer churn and understanding historical sales data for XYZ. Okay, well, did you know in SAP Analytics Cloud, now we have generative AI there where I can go and type in with a natural query language, show me a chart of XYZ by XYZ. Here you go.
Right there, self-serve.
Right, self-served on large language models ready to go. So my take would be, and I'm curious what yours is too, but my take would be, step back, what's 3 use cases that I could use this to simplify and accelerate my business?
Nice, nice. I love it. And mine is similar. I think my hot take on it is it's everybody's talking about it, right? The moment that we can break that down into tangible steps, right? Specifically the office of the CFO, like how do we find that application, right? A lot across the functional areas, sales, marketing, they're seeing great successes, right? And I think as finance, as we always are, we're the laggards of technology adoption, right? Where we can find it where it's applicable, right? And I think the ultimate goal, and I get this question asked a lot, Kaiser, is AI going to take my job, right? And I'm like, no, it's not going to take your job. It's meant to level you up. It's meant to put you in these higher value activities, everything we talked about, the collaboration, the connection, the consistency, right? Bringing that to the business. That to me is, I think, what the role of generative AI and the application that it's going to have. But it's definitely an exciting time. What a time to be in this element right now. So, Kaiser, thank you so much for your time.
You too, Chris.
If people want to learn more about you, learn more about SAP DataSphere, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you?
Go to sap.com/datasphere. That's where I want you to go. Go there, learn about it. And the best thing I would say is hit guided experience. And we got a free guided experience that'll guide you through what it's like. No coding required to get to know the product better.
Awesome, awesome. Kaiser, thank you so much for your time.
You too, Chris. Thank you.